My name is Reverend Juniper Meadows. I use she, her pronouns. I'm very colorful today, very purple. My hair is still a little green. We're working through it. Looking for a stylist. Tired of going it alone? Well, like Ashley's video says, especially when it comes to things like bullying, teasing, when it's happening around us, no matter how old you are, you might be 7 years old or 70 years old or anything in between or outside of those parameters. It often just takes one person to step in, to lean in, to cut it out. And I have a poem for you, friends, one that I wrote recently. Hear these words by yours truly. I feel you, strumming fingers on the strands of my soul, mirrored neurons, secret fire. The call comes from within my house of glass, part of a whole, bound to all, approximating some parsimony, for I feel myself feeling you. For now we approach each other, a mirror darkened by distance, holding the private hell and longing to be face to face. This is the everyday magic, the lines between our loneliness, some silver tether, a bed of feathers, mycelial twines of emotion in an ocean beneath us all. Balled fists flail the heavens, and I feel myself feeling you, to navigate the maze of movement, for I am and you are all, and this is how we remain human. Speaking of humans, in an interview a week or so ago, you may know of this character who has become thrust even more into the popular imagination, one Elon Musk, who I aim to speak of today as a complete person because he is complex. He is also extremely powerful, and so he has it coming to him. Infamous car salesman, rocket enthusiast, union buster, Twitter purchaser, who now heads the so-called Department of Government Efficiency, an agency currently eyeballing Social Security like a hawk to a mouse, said something utterly baffling to me, calling of all things, and you might have heard this, empathy a weakness. Not only a weakness, the greatest weakness in Western culture, empathy, y'all, that force which calls us together, that names each of us kindred. How, what, who is this guy? If you don't know, Elon was born in Pretoria, South Africa in the 1970s. That's the administrative district. And his wealthy family benefited heavily from the white supremacist apartheid system, with his father owning some stake in an emerald mine operating under murky conditions. Now, I don't want to give you the impression that they are architects of apartheid, but they did benefit from it heavily. I can't go into a full biography here. Suffice to say, he has been a polarizing figure since coming to the States as a young man, where he launched his career in the emerging tech industry. And through the few companies he had a hand in founding and the several that he purchased, Musk has amassed wealth and power that is simply staggering on a scale that few can comprehend, much of it through public funding. That's your money, friends. Billions in government subsidies for Tesla and SpaceX, money that might have gone to public transit, to housing, to climate justice, was instead funneled into private ventures with public messaging and private profit in mind. And y'all, what do we get in return? Tunnels of cars instead of buses, tunnels instead of trains, fictions of Mars instead of the real, actual Earth, courtesy of the failed Boring Company and SpaceX, respectively. If we are Canada, then, well, we get our government EV program swindled. That's a recent development, with Teslas just sitting in empty parking lots, unused, unpurchased by actual people. We get a man who can all but purchase elections through the brute force of high finance, who would gamble away our freedom to claim some kind of authority. We get a platform, Twitter, now called X, where transphobia and disinformation and hate speech flourish under the banner of free speech. We get a man who mocks pronouns, dismisses worker protections, and speaks of empathy as if it were a flaw in the algorithm of life, as though humanity, life itself, were something that can be stripped bare and rendered efficient. He has peddled COVID misinformation, mishandling his massive influence to ultimately put people in serious danger. And we get silence, y'all. Chilling silence from a culture that still believes power excuses cruelty, that believes individualism trumps the needs of the poor, that would burn this world for some hypothetical vision of the future warped to fit the whims of the richest man in the world. There is a story being sold to us, a modern soteriology, a theory of salvation, a story of salvation by billionaires who will redeem this world not by healing its wounds, but by leaving it and its people behind. Techno-optimism promises some Star Trek society built on the backs of the still hurting working class, a meritocracy where merit is calculated by efficiency and bank accounts. Respond to this email with what you've done today. Musk has fashioned himself in such an image, often called a visionary, but a vision without love is not liberation, y'all. You know this, it is utter delusion. So let me be quite clear, and I'm sure you know this. This man is no Messiah, but he is a mirror. He is the Afrikaner son of colonizers whose condition is predicated on highly oppressive regimes with little will to deeply reflect on or amend the troubles which he and his family so heavily profited from. He reflects what happens when we prioritize some idea of brilliance over real and actual care, ego over equity, escape over commitment. He reflects a system that rewards dominance and punishes vulnerability. He reflects perhaps our own all too human temptations to look away, to dream of somewhere else, to flee the unbearable weight of loving a world in pain. How does one wind up like this? So deluded by their own power. I hate to say it, friends, but I don't think anyone in this room could become a billionaire. Not because you can't or won't work hard, no, but because in the accumulation of such wealth, you would give it away. You would give it away for the service to other people. Now, if Mr. Musk's history of breaking unions and demonstrating malice were any indicator, this is not a man in possession of a liberatory spirit. Perhaps power has dulled the ability to appreciate or even feel true empathy. There is a wound that often accompanies massive power because you become denatured from the rest of humanity, fundamentally separate. And friends, this is terrible for someone's brain. This is terrible for someone's brain when they become above criticism. They become above accountability and they are out of control. This is bad for him as a person, and it's bad for all of us as a society. Now, I'm not saying that Elon nor other billionaires are not human. They most certainly are. But as they say, power can corrupt, especially unchecked power. And absolute unchecked power corrupts absolutely. While it's not bad to have power in and of itself, do not mistake me saying that. We must be discerning and judicious if we are to use that power for the common good. We must have accountability because here we have next to none. And again, and I'll do this again, I'll quote Dr. Martin Luther King, who says, we must remember that power without love is reckless and abusive. Love without power is sentimental and anemic. It is through the meeting of these forces that love's demands can be realized as justice in the world. We need both to rouse that sleeping giant. It makes a sorry kind of sense that one so powerful would denigrate empathy. Or what other force could serve to curb the tendency to hoard such masses of power? What else could deter its use to selfish ends? Folks like Elon, as well as other billionaire contemporaries of his, may call themselves, and you might hear this term again in the future, they might call themselves effective altruists. Folks who intend to change I heard you, folks who intend to change the world in the biggest picture by pie in the sky means like colonizing Mars or decentralizing currency with the blockchain and crypto, or inventing AI that outstrips humanity in terms of intelligence. Who knows? Who knows where such technology could take us? But if the current system that would contain such technology is any indicator, I reckon that most of us will be casually and callously left behind. Without empathy as a guide, we cannot rely on these leaders to guide us with true reason, for they are not led by love's demands. Remember, power, while corruptive, if unchecked, is not evil. We must build power together. but we must wield it and weld it to love's demands. Empathy is the vehicle by which this happens. It's what gets you out of bed to care for your neighbor. And only when our leaders meet this mark will they truly be worthy of the trust of the people. We stay with this earth, even when it groans beneath the weight of greed, and we stay with each other, even when empathy is inconvenient. And y'all, it often is, because it's not about efficiency. We stay with the marginalized, the wounded, the silenced, because salvation does not come from the sky. It comes from solidarity. I don't preach, friends, against imagination or big dreams. I don't speak against ambition, rather abdication, the abandonment of that force which makes us human, empathy, caring. To imagine a better future is a holy endeavor, but to imagine a future that doesn't include the most vulnerable amongst us, that is not imagination. That is empire in a spacesuit. So what if everything's computers? If not everyone can be included? Let us reject the myth that the future belongs only to the powerful. It belongs to you and everyone in between. Let us remember that it belongs to the most faithful, not of a particular God or vision of ultimacy, but to those who stay when it would be easier to leave, who care when it would be easier to conquer, those who love this world enough to refuse to give up on it. Because the true measure of a visionary is not how far they can reach, but how wide they can draw the circle. Will you rejoin me in that same spirit of reverence to hear this blessing for the brokenhearted by Jan Richardson? And she begins it with a quote from Henry David Thoreau: "There is no remedy for love, but to love more." Join me, friends, in that spirit of prayer. Let us agree for now that we will not say the breaking makes us stronger, or that it is better to have this pain than to have done without this love. Let us promise we will not tell ourselves time will heal the wound when every day our waking opens it anew. Perhaps for now, it can be enough to simply marvel at the mystery of how a heart so broken can go on beating as if it were made for precisely this, as if it knows the only cure for love is more of it, as if it sees the heart's sole remedy for breaking is to love still, as if it trusts that its own persistent pulse is the rhythm of a blessing we cannot begin to fathom, but will save us nonetheless. Amen. Blessed be. I'll invite Tom forward for a shared reading, one of our favorites here, particularly fitting for today, number 666, an auspicious number in our hardback hymnal, but profound nonetheless, the legacy of caring by that luminary of care, Tondeka.
Despair is my private pain born from what I have failed to say, failed to do, failed to overcome.
Be still, my inner self. Let me rise to you. Let me reach down into your pain and soothe you.
I turn to you to renew my life. I turn to the world, the streets of the city, the worn tapestries, brokerage firms.
Crack dealers, private estates, personal things in the bag lady's cart.
Rage and pain, the faces that turn from me, afraid of their own inner worlds.
This common world I love anew as the lifeblood of generations who refuse to surrender their humanity in an inhumane world courses through my veins.
From within this world, my despair is transformed into hope.
And I begin anew the legacy of caring. Tom. Here, friends, we honor that legacy of caring, and may we enter it ourselves. With empathy, we may think of it as the vibration between the bonds binding things together, perhaps not even exclusive to humans, but for us, it is the means by which we experience the call to care. It is our inner fire, our guiding star. But like any fire, it too may burn us. Empathy is no idol, friends. It is a root of wisdom, a ground of experience, our ability to approximate the feeling of another and to be moved by that feeling. People can and have used other people's empathy to nefarious ends. Scammers who target our churches do this all the time, right? Churches that are targeted get our, excuse me, empathy, though, empathy, your empathy is a power. And like any power, we must be discerning and judicious, lest we be swept away, swindled, or worse. And as empathy researcher and Stanford University psychologist Jamil Zaki describes it, empathy is the psychological superglue that connects people and undergirds cooperation and kindness. When we speak of the bonds that bind each to all, that interconnected web of life, this is it. It is a pointed and effective indicator of what other humans find good, helpful, needed. Hence, it is our guide. If I may, when we heed this sensibility, this common call to care, this is when we attend to the voice of God, Spirit, the ground of being. The story of the Good Samaritan teaches us this, teaches empathy that crosses cultural boundaries. The Buddhist concept of interbeing is extolled in the Dhammapada, which reads, all tremble at violence, all fear death, putting ourselves in the place of another, one should not harm, nor cause another to harm. And in the Bhagavad Gita, it is written that one is the highest yogi who regards the joys and sorrows of all beings as their own. Across cultures, traditions, time, and the world, this is taught true. Empathy is our connection to one another, and from one another to the divine. In Elon Musk's original home of South Africa, the indigenous Bantu people practiced the philosophy of Ubuntu. This term is found in various African languages, such as Zulu and Xhosa, and while it defies exact translation, its essence lies in mutuality, respect, interconnectedness, and compassion. Archbishop Desmond Tutu describes Ubuntu like this: my humanity is caught up, is inextricably bound up in what is yours. We belong in a bundle of life, a bundle of life. That interconnected web is no neat, clean thing. Ubuntu is not only social, but spiritual. It implies there is a shared soul or a vital force, sometimes called Serti or Niyama, or in English, a vital energy, linking all people, and in many indigenous cosmologies, all beings. To live without Ubuntu, then, is to be spiritually impoverished, even if materially wealthy. To practice this is to recognize that dignity is not a zero-sum game. When I honor your worth, I deepen my own. In Ubuntu, empathy is not optional, it is ontological. We are made to be in communion. To deny empathy is to deny our very nature as a human animal. This does not mean passive niceness. It has some teeth to it. It demands justice, but it also calls for restorative justice, not throwing people away, but justice that restores relationships rather than merely punishes. This was powerfully demonstrated during South Africa's post-apartheid Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where Ubuntu guided the pursuit of healing through truth-telling, accountability, and forgiveness. And boy, did those folks need it. Ubuntu understands that people cannot be reduced to their very worst acts. It insists that dignity can be remembered even after harm. This does not mean forgetting, but it means believing in the possibility of wholeness, even in broken places. And we live in a time when many feel alone and ostracized and cut off, even in crowded cities, disconnected in our hyper-connected networks. The myth of the self-made individual has led to burnout and loneliness and moral numbness. Systems of power are rewarding domination, extraction, and control, and empathy is rendered a weakness, vulnerability a suspect. Ubuntu, for the modern empathy heretic, offers an antidote, whispers a deeper truth. We belong to each other. Your freedom is bound up in mine. Your grief is not foreign to me. Your joy expands the field of what is possible for all of us. Imagine communities that practice this not as some hypothetical theory or some neat thing, but as an actual living sacred rhythm. Imagine institutions shaped by the question, what restores our shared humanity? Imagine leaders who saw compassion not as an add-on, but as the very ground of their legitimacy. Knowing this, these times and whatever gods may be would demand that we give a damn to participate in the legacy of caring. Given how complex the phenomenon of our experience of care is, the psychology of it, and how wicked the troubles of our times are, we can easily burn the candle at every end and become empathy fatigued. And this is a recipe for an entrenched and hard to pull out apathy. So we are called by love to do a hard thing, to remain soft without succumbing, firm enough to endure without letting the ills of the world merely wash over us. Getting the tension that often accompanies such feelings out is integral, and action and movement on the part of justice are one common and strong outlet. But in the in-between, what do you do in the in-between? In the midst of uncertainty, in the midst between actions, one can still journal, share, make art, express, rest, seek the centered places that temper the inner fire, and allow anger and frustration to take the shape of something useful. Living a philosophy like Ubuntu and seeking such common callings within our own traditions is the sure beacon towards home when so much seems so lost. But it does not call us to burn ourselves away. The call to care does not demand we forget ourselves. So, friends, as hard as it may be, and as hard as it might get, as challenged as our faith may be, as we keep and hold faith in humanity, may we do this, at least for ourselves, at least for our neighbors, stretching it wider and wider still until the whole world is wrapped in the warm blanket of our compassion. We are many individual hearts and minds, and yet this individualism, while righteous at a time, has come back to bite us, I'm afraid. We need to remember that we belong to one another across communities, countries, divides, and even across gaps of wealth and power. A heretic, friends, this is what we've been called in the past. In a time when the powerful would render something as central and sacred as empathy a sin, then we, as Unitarian Universalists, must reconnect to our legacy of heresy. A heretic is simply this, friends. It's just one who chooses. That's what the word means. One who makes a choice. We who would choose to stay with the trouble. We who would choose to be washed in the very same rain. We who would choose to rise under the same stars. We who would choose to swim to the other side of the troubles in pursuit of a better world. Friends, keep to the path of caring. Choose love even when and especially when it is hard. Embrace the living heresy of care as we work, all of us, in ways great and small to realize justice in this trying age.